The brothers WISP. The brothers WISP, brothers WISP. The brothers WISP. The brothers.
You're now listening to Greg. It's the Brothers WISP.
Hey everybody, this is Greg with the Brothers WISP number 132. Coming at you hot, coming in hot, guns hot. All right, so let's get this stuff out of the way. We don't have any new patrons this go around, which is always sad face, and that is thebrotherswisp.com / or no, it's patreon.com / thebrotherswisp. That's what I'm talking about. You go in there, throw us a couple of bones, you get access to the patron only Slack. So come on, guys, where are you at? I want to see some new faces.
Yeah, I've been advertising it on Facebook and everything.
Well, that's your problem right there.
Yeah, there you see.
No, but let's see. What do we got? We do have some sponsors, and I think Tommy's going to read off our first one.
Yeah, I called dibs on the Brothers WISP this week is brought to you by Sonar, a scalable, intuitive, and comprehensive ISP billing and operational support system. You can learn more at Sonar.software or listen to the podcast that we just did with, or you guys just did with him, and where he talks about the Microsoft Airband initiative that he was working on. So cool guys, take a look at him.
For sure. And that was Tommy Krogan, right?
Oh, yeah.
Krogan?
Yep.
Not Krogan.
Yeah.
And he's all the way from, where are you at? Where you're in
Snowy
Colorado, right?
Yep, Snowy Colorado, where we're getting, we're closing in on 2 inches right now.
Well, I'll take every inch I can.
Yeah.
Mikey, up in Chicagoland, which spots are you reading today?
I'll go with QuickBits, the indoor and outdoor 60 gigahertz kit that is just set it and forget it simple. Crazy feature set for the price with API, deployment tools, solid distance, and up to 8 clients per hub. You can contact them on their website if you are interested in purchasing any of these products. And I guess we also had a podcast with them last fall.
Yeah.
It was Justin Miller and some guys from QuickBit and a Fiber/Wisp that is using them.
Yeah. Well, Denny's been threatening us with a good time to do a podcast on tower coverage, and that is towercoverage.com. Tower coverage is your RF propagation system to empower your network. Real-time data metrics enable your coverage area, reaching your customer base, and more. The industry's best RF propagation mapping system allows website integration for custom sign-up and pre-qualification. Here's the best part. It uses this data to scientifically plan network expansion and help your WISP succeed. Get a free trial today at towercoverage.com.
Science.
You got to scream it. Maybe shake your fist to the heavens while you scream it. You know, it's all good. Any way you want to do it. It's just recommendations, folks. Just recommendations.
And it helps you get your stuff taken care of. Use your brain. Do things easy.
All right, for sure. Let's see. So I'll get my shameless plug out of the way. I started a new conversation podcast. I had mentioned it before, and I finally recorded season 1. I've got the first episode is up. Excuse me. It's with Professor Tim Wilson. He's this quite interesting character, very eccentric, I guess is probably the best way to put it. I found him from a British reality TV show called The Circle, season 2, and I had a good time talking to that guy, but several other interesting faces that are on there. Hey, Tommy, try putting your other ear thingy on. I think I'm hearing myself come back, which, you know, again, I do love hearing myself. I was just curious if perhaps that was what it's coming from.
I did just notice that I have 2 Skypes running.
Mikey, is this your fault somehow?
So I don't know which one to close.
Mikey,
they are both
Mikey.
muted.
How does that happen that it allows you to
no
connect
idea.
in twice? You're a technology guy, Mike. You're supposed to understand these things.
Hey now.
It's a technology podcast.
Let's see here. I've been on this one for 22 minutes, this one for 10. Let's close the one with 10.
All right, let's see what happens. Drum roll.
All right. I'm only
Still there.
using one one Skype now.
All right. All right. Congratulations. We've survived it. So anyway, if you guys are interested in listening to me ramble on, actually in that one, I almost can't get a word in edgewise, so it might be preferable for a lot of you folks, but it's pretty funny, and pop in there if you're so inclined. I figured, what was it like? Ollie, he likes listening to weird stories from people all over the world, so maybe he'll be interested in that. Maybe I can get at least one listener, so I'm on board for that. But let's move on to some of the actual interesting stuff. And I want to hear about Tommy's adventures with his CCR2004 doing version 7.1. So you went beta on us, bro.
Yeah, I decided that I had a 2004 that was just sitting there, and I wanted to try out V7 before I have to throw it into the data center. So I decided to set up BGP to my home router, and then start it running, and make certain everything was all good, and then update from V6 to V7, and just to get kind of an idea. What I didn't realize before I posted was that it didn't automatically reconnect, and what I ended up having to do was add in local address into the V7 BGP peer config, so that then it connected. I did lose my route filters, and I wasn't able to get route filters working. The Mikrotik commands I literally just copied and pasted them from the website into my terminal, and I couldn't get them to work. And I played around with it for 2 hours this morning, and then probably 3 or 4 hours like Tuesday evening. So I couldn't get it to talk, but I was able to get it to talk and pass routes. I just couldn't filter anything. So it's working. It's definitely different, but it all kind of, once you just kind of decide to okay, take a step back and just be like, okay, what are we trying to do here? It sort of makes sense. Unfortunately, I've only ever done BGP with Mikrotik routers, so I'm not super familiar with how just the different concepts. I was listening a while back to you guys talk with Andrew about V7's BGP config and how it's changed. And he was saying hey, this is definitely unique and different, but if you have some experience with other router vendors, you're gonna have a little bit more familiarity and comfort sometimes. So it's all right. I'm not it's just something to learn, and it's a different way of doing it, and it definitely I pushed, wasn't a lot of routes, maybe 40 routes to it, and it just loaded those right up, but I'd kind of expect that from a 2004. So I've yet to push full routes, but I know there are some people out there who are pushing full routes with a 2004 running V6, so it's definitely doable. Oh, actually no, I have a 2004 that's got 2 full routes going to it over IBGP, running that right now. Got to run into fun experiences with that this week as well. So
on this one, you started with a base config that had BGP. You did the version 7 upgrade, and you let it kind of auto do the conversion, and just so it looks like route filters are the one piece that didn't really carry over. Is that what you're saying? And you said something else. What was the something else?
There's so you can control you can set what your local address is going to be for the BGP peer, because you have templates, which is kind of the replacement for instances, and then you have I can't remember the connection, which is kind of a replacement for peers. Not exactly. They definitely have differences and overlaps with how they work. And really think of connections as templates as really they are just an overarching hey, these are settings that I want to be able to use across all of my BGP sessions. And then in each of the connections you can be okay, I'm going to take this template, and then you can make specific changes to that so that you have a connection. And then in there, one of them is local address. my router didn't transfer that stuff over. It may be because I didn't have all that advanced or complete. It was complete, it worked, and then I downgraded it and it worked too. But you just had to put the local address, which is the IP address of your router, of your V7 router, connecting to what the IP it's going to use to connect to the other one, other BGP peer. So that was the only thing I had to screw around with, and once I added that in, it started. Oh, that and connection and listening. By default, Mikrotik, when you set up a new peer, it it'll do connected and listening unless you hit passive, in which case then it just listens. You do have to turn on connected and listening as well. That's another little gotcha for in V7 that I did find. But honestly, this is BGP, and there's obviously going to be changes with how everything's going to work, because Mikrotik's commands, just like for the route filters, I copied and pasted them exactly in. I put in the same stuff, and you can add them into address lists. You can get the address list put into your router for what you want to advertise, and address lists become very, very important. IPv4 and IPv6 for deciding, okay, hey, what's going to be sent, which is really, really cool to me because address lists are really efficient. But it's not the filtering portion just isn't. I couldn't get it working after a few hours, even a few hours of goofing around with it. So.
I mean, it is a beta, right? So you'd expect holes in it.
Yeah.
So what were you doing this just for funsies, just to see what would happen?
Yeah, I was debating if I wanted to try running beta code on a router in the data center, just because there isn't anything terribly important. But I was like, I can't get route filters to work. I shouldn't just hook something up that's not filtering anything of what it's saying to the broader internet. Yeah, no. So I downgraded it, and I've been configuring that today. But
nice.
Yeah.
While we're talking about Mikrotik shenanigans, I figured I would talk about my my recent. I mean, there's other stuff we could talk about, but I really want an event.
Real quick, since it would connect more to what Tommy was saying.
Yeah.
I believe I mentioned this in a previous cast, but it would be nice if Mikrotik put like a website together that would, you drop your V6 configuration in, and it tells you what the V7 configuration would be, like on a website, versus loading it into a router and then upgrading.
Oh, and then having to do it to convert. So you want to just do it and then start with just a clean slate router and load your configs in.
Right. Yeah. But I'm not looking at it to be I don't want to learn the new way. Let me dump in what I know and then just copy and paste. I just think it'd be like it would be another tool for someone to learn the new way of doing something versus looking through all. To me, manual pages, they tell you everything, but they tell you nothing. It's like I know every option, but I don't know how to use the options. If I could drop in my V6 config and it says, okay, here's what you would do in V7, and then you can compare. And okay, that's how this actually works. I have the manual here. The manual says these are my options. Here I see how it would actually work. I mean, I can't imagine that would take very long to put together because they already do it. A script exists to convert it when you're doing an upgrade. Apparently there might be some bugs. But most of the work's already there. Just put it on a website. And let me just play around with stuff. How would this work? How would that work? Just another tool to learn a new way of doing it.
Well, I guess you could also, in lieu of having a website, you could spin up a CHR and put a config in there and upgrade that thing. Let it do its magic. See what happens.
You could. I mean, like there's ways of doing it. It just seems like, a website would be easier.
Yeah.
For the people to use.
I feel like Mikrotik would just say, well, but you can do it with X and Y. the couple different routes that we just suggested, and they'd be like, well, why in the world do you want to do it that way?
Because I do.
Yeah.
Damn it.
And I actually like your suggestion. It helps me to fiddle with things and play with things and know that I can't break things when I'm fiddling and breaking things.
Says the guy who wanted to put version 7.1 beta in the data center.
I was debating it. The difference.
Right. Hopefully that debate, I should say, didn't take you very long to come to a decision on. So,
well,
yeah,
you
made the right one, I think.
Okay, all right. I am running it already in my network, not really for production stuff, but for a VPN stuff and a BGP black hole. I was like, man, I don't care if black hole. Yeah, I want that to advertise anything I tell it to. So
you're braver than me. That's all I can say, Tommy. Definitely braver than I am. So, time for I'm gonna do one of Mike's patented rants, but it's a Greg version, so it's probably not as loud and boisterous. But here recently, so I've got an MDU, and I've got a CCR on the edge. Works great. I love those things. That connects to a CRS317, right? So it's in their flagship 3 series, and it is the 16 port, 10 gig switch, right? Cloud router switch. And then all of my edge switches are CRS328s, which are the 24 port PoE guys. So that had mostly been running well until just recently I got a phone call, like a support call. This guy was saying that there's a game called Escape from Tarkov, and he was like, I'm playing this game and it keeps like bugging out on me. I can't figure out what's going on. It seems like it's like a network related thing. So I was like, all right, let me start looking into it. And about an hour later, I had to go on to something else. And about an hour later, I get a phone call and some guy saying, hey, yeah, I'm having problems getting to these games, as well as like my Zoom calls for school keep like locking up or like freezing up. And I was like, oh, that's weird. So I looked at their room numbers and they both hung off the same switch. So I jumped into that switch and I took a look at the log and I saw the SFP plus interface going back to the core going ham. I mean, it was like the log was full of link flaps. And so I went into the interface and I looked at the receive side and I was incrementing FCS errors on that SFP plus interface on the 317, as it came in. It was incrementing FCS errors and it was just rolling errors like crazy. I connected to the 328, the edge switch, and that guy, he was incrementing errors coming in, and both of them were seeing link flaps like bonkers. Like it was up for 5 days and there was like 4,100 link flaps on that thing. So I mean, it was just constant. That and in conjunction with the errors. So I started investigating the other interfaces on that core switch, and they were all showing FCS errors and they were all showing link flaps. Obviously not as bad as that one, otherwise I would have been getting a lot more calls. So the first thing I thought, I was like, the other ones, they aren't doing too bad, so maybe it's just a hardware problem. So I went out there and I changed out the SFPs one at a time. Nothing. I changed out the patch cables one at a time. Nothing. I changed out the fiber that went in between the IDF and the MDF there. Nothing changed. I then upgraded to the newest long-term version of code on them because they were a little bit older, and nothing changed. So I said, you know what? I need to change out that core switch, that 317. Obviously, there's something wrong with it because it's the one incrementing FCS on all the interfaces. I feel like it's the single point that's probably problematic. So what I did is I went to eBay and I ordered me a nice Cisco Nexus 3064. That's 48 port 10 gig switch by Cisco 1U. It's really good, solid. I've used it plenty of times very successfully. And so I started doing some digging on the forums, the Mikrotik forums, and I saw where some folks were saying, some of this was in conjunction with DAC cables. They were saying that, they were having link problems specifically between the 317 and 328. And then I saw some where people were saying just optical, they were having link flap issues between those two devices specifically. Somebody was suggesting that they sent one off for repair and that seemed to have fixed it. So I don't know if that was in specifically talking about the DAC stuff or this optical problem, but I submitted a support ticket to Mikrotik, and from what I could find on the forums, this is something of a known issue to some degree. And they sent me back a message that said, lately we've been testing new SFP Plus signal adjustments for the 300 series switches, and they have given improvements regarding link stability. Could you please upgrade all of your switches to the beta version, the newest beta version? To which, in my head, I said, no, I'm not going to run beta code across all of my stuff. For one, I'm just not sure what other errors that would introduce. But two, the site is 2.5 hours away from me. So if anything went wrong, it's like it's not easy for me to just pop over and troubleshoot and stuff. So I configured the 3064. I whacked that together really fast. I mean, it doesn't take much to get those things in order. And I gave it to one of my guys. He drove it down there day of. He slopped in the new 317, and it immediately had the exact same problem. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to upgrade it to the beta code just to see what it do. And while he went out to the car to grab the 3064, I went ahead and upgraded it to beta on the router OS and the router board firmware as well. And it did make an improvement, but it was still link flapping and it was still incrementing FCS and errors. So I was like, obviously this didn't fix the problem. So then I had him pull that switch, throw in the Cisco 3064, and it immediately cleaned up. Clears, I mean, just running perfectly. It's been running for about a day and a half. Yeah, somewhere around 35 hours, something like that. And I haven't had a single error, nothing FCS, no interface flaps. It's just running perfect, And I'm pushing, on average, I think somewhere between 200 and 500 megabits out of that complex, and not a single peep. Everything's just been smooth sailing. So I'm not 100% sure what is going on between the 317 and the 328. I know the link between my 317 and my CCR is 10 gig SFP, same make model, and that was running flawlessly right to the routers. I know Nick was saying that he has like 70 of those out, but he's got them going into 4011s at towers, and he said those are running fine too. So there's some voodoo between the 317 and the 328 where it is, I guess it's just problematic and somewhat of a known issue. I just wish that was published a little bit more clearly, so that I knew not to use that combination, at least until they figure out whatever the problem is. So I was fairly aggravated. I don't know, man. Like when stuff is like, it could be a multitude of things that are wrong. That gives me a lot of anxiety. I'm sitting over here trying to figure it out, back and forth. But I was glad to get to a resolution. So if you guys are out there in the field and you are planning on doing some 328s, or you're having issues between your 328s and your 317s, maybe try swapping out that 317 for something else. And you're probably going to have a better time. Yeah, the 328s have been working really well for me as edge switches, right? Doing the PoE, I'm powering a whole bunch of HAP AC squareds, and they're loving it. I'm powering like some access control hubs. Had zero problems with any of that infrastructure. It's really just 10 gig back to the 317 that I've had problems with. So word to the wise.
I was looking at getting a 328 for my house, but I ended up going with a 326 and then a Unify switch with PoE. I think the overall price ended up being cheaper. And I only needed a few PoE. I didn't need all of them to be PoE, so that I wasn't really looking forward to adding a Unify switch to this network, but just cost-wise, it just ended up being what I had to do.
Price-wise, how much difference was it? Like $100?
Something like that. It was probably 6 months ago when I bought it.
Okay.
But
in the grand scheme of things, for a single switch, $100 that's not that big a difference. I think I would have just went with whatever I wanted to use. Why are you being so cheap, Mike?
Because I am cheap.
Fair enough. So, ironically, on that 6.49 beta 22, which they were telling me to upgrade, that they made those improvements, I saw somebody else post in the chat that their CCR2004s supposedly have some stability improvements in that beta code that a lot of folks have been told to switch to that when it says switch improved resource allocation on, and it's got the chipset number for the CCR2004s. Saying something about packet loss. If you get over like 2 to 3 gigs on that thing, you'll start getting packet loss on the 2004s, and this supposedly helps with that. What were you gonna say, Mike?
Oh, I was gonna say, it was like, which it sounds like from the description that's not really, like, at face value, that doesn't seem to be like what a lot of people's problems with the 2004 is. But I mean, you could see where, you know, where a resource allocation issue could cause other problems. Maybe, I mean, you went on to say packet loss, but resource allocation issues could cause reboots. So I guess it depends upon which resources are having allocation issues and how they manifest themselves.
Yeah, I think somebody was saying on Facebook that it's the resource allocation to the SFP28s versus the 10 gig interfaces. There's the 25 gig link to a switch chip, or 50 gig link to a switch chip, or something like that, and there's resource allocations in that they changed up. I think that was Kevin Myers.
Yeah,
posted on Facebook about that.
Says, most of the issues that have been observed related to use of the 10 gig ports and not the 25 gig ports, is what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hopefully, you get some solutions to that. They were also saying if you were running 1 gig in your 10 gig ports, that can be a source of issues, but I've been doing that on my 2004 since we started running that 3-4 months ago. Admittedly, it's not passing a significant amount of traffic, just some management and some other stuff, and then like bandwidth tests, but I've never had that thing reboot on me. And the only times it's rebooted has been when I've been like, oh, well, I'll just try out some of the other code just to see what happens. It's not really running a significant portion of my network right now or yet. So here soon, though, it will be. That's going to be fun when that starts throwing a fit, when I actually run a boatload of traffic across it.
What's funny is the 317. So I've got a lab here with a couple of 328s in it, and I brought that new one that I got, and I put it in here, and I tried to jam as much traffic as I could through it, like actually through the switches, and I wasn't getting any problems. It was not until I put it out there at the site, and I guess I had 8 different 10 gig switches all pumping traffic through it. Not that it was, I mean, all of it was less than 500 megabits, but something, the conditions were just right. I'm not exactly sure what.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's seeing on the internet, whether it's Facebook or forums, or even on our own Slack, talking about 2004 issues and 1072 issues. You've got people that I've deployed them 30 times and I never have had a problem with any of them. You got people that's like, I've deployed 30 and all 30 had problems. And you can say, there's a guy saying, somebody says it's connection tracking. I get to 5,000 connections and it stops working. Somebody else says, well, I'm running 1 million through it and that's when it stopped working. And then somebody says it's a 1 gig SFP, it's the problem. Tommy's been running 1 gig SFPs and they're not problems. So it's just like, there's so many, and there's just so many anecdotes as to what the problems are, and then somebody counters, say, well, I've got way more than that and there's no problem. It's just confusing, and I'm sure for the developers trying to troubleshoot this, it's equally confusing, because they're it's like, well, what is the problem? Or or likely there's multiple problems manifesting themselves different ways, and it's,
yeah,
and I just can't imagine trying to be in their shoes, trying to figure out which of, because, those 1072s have been out there for a long time. Lots of people using them a long time, and others say, I add OSPF and it stops working, or I don't, and it just all this conflicting information.
Yeah, or like, what if it's an issue you can only reproduce out in the field? You can't actually reproduce it in your lab, which is the problem I was having. It's like, how's Mikrotik going to work on that? Because I'm not going to let them hack away at my active network where people are upset. I can't. I just can't do that.
It actually did give them access to one of my routers to look at a bug, and then I didn't hear back from them. I'm not sure if they're still doing anything with it or not. But the other peer decided that they no longer wish to have that session. So, not sure what we're going to accomplish.
And I do appreciate like people reporting, even though it's like super weird, because like Greg mentioned that he was having SFP errors or FCS errors on his 300 series switch, and people had mentioned that there was possibly some fixes. And I just set up a 305, and I was looking this morning and I saw, oh hey, look, there's a boatload of FCS errors on it. And I'm way different situation. I'm running some probably sketchy Ethernet cables between it and the router that I'm have it talking to, and I've got bonded ports and such like that, and copper to SFP plus, so there's probably issues with that as well. But I did try updating to 6481, and that seems to, and I'm still getting FCS errors and RX code errors on it, so we'll see. I'll try running the beta because I don't care. Because it's not talking to anything right now, and eventually when it will start talking to stuff, I will want it. Oh, hello, kitty. I will want it to work great, because I'm gonna have most of my internet running through this bloody little thing. So we'll definitely want that. Yep, 3 link downs in the last 5 minutes, so not going to be useful. Let's try beta code.
Are you passing traffic through that thing?
No.
Okay, so it's just sitting there and it's incrementing.
Yeah, I got the idea of burning in stuff from you, and that's actually a really good idea. Just let it sit. Let it do its thing for a couple days. See if anything just randomly breaks.
Yeah. Well, I have a long track record of buying stuff off of eBay. So usually I want to see, is it going to just completely crash over after being online for a few days? So sometimes the answer would be yes, but not very often. Usually it would just work. But,
yeah. See, now I just have a really long track record of buying something and then letting it sit for a few months before it actually gets to whatever project it needs to be used for.
Months.
Yeah.
Months, you noob. I've got things I've bought that I've had them for years and I haven't deployed them yet.
I am a pleb to you, Mike.
I have a whole site that I was gonna recable. I was gonna move it from an RB750 up to, I think, a 3011 is what I was gonna go to. I bought all the packet flux POE injectors and DC power supplies and batteries and all kinds of stuff, and I bought a new case to put it in because I was just using like those little 1 foot by 1 foot PVC things, which is fine for a 750, but when I build something out more substantial, I need a bigger box. I think I've had it so long that I need to go buy a new battery because I'm sure the battery is shot by now. Yeah, I've had some of the Ubiquiti air prisms to deploy since they were potentially new to the market type thing, and haven't deployed them yet. Not because I don't want to. It's just haven't gotten to it. I guess I made it worse now because I just bought 9 more B5Cs. Hopefully those don't just sit in the box for a while.
You may have a problem, Mike.
I have a problem of, yes, I have problems and I need to fix them, and then I don't. So, which is a problem.
Good times. Well, you guys want to take a look at the Mikrotik Newsletter number 99.
Oh yeah, dude. I was so excited seeing that come through.
Oh, right. It seems like it's been a little while, but I assume maybe I was just underwhelmed on the last one.
Yeah, the last one was meh. But I mean this one was a little bit more interesting. I'm definitely excited about the SFP28 module. It's like ooh. 150 bucks
Oh,
is a
yeah.
little hard. Is a little
Yeah,
bit of a
well,
big pill to swallow, but
They're saying it's combination.
yeah.
Which means it'll basically do 1 gig, 10 gig, or 25 gig all in the same module. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's handy dandy. You can just have a very expensive module that you can always carry around with you.
Yeah, because right now, like if I go to Fiber Store, I can pick up SFP Plus modules for I think like $22 or something, and I bet I could get a standard SFP one for probably like $10. So
Let me
I
double
would say
check here.
use that in emergency scenarios. I definitely wouldn't say use that for 1 gig like on the reg, because that seems crazy.
Yeah. I just bought from Fiber Store 10 gig SFP module that was what? $50 I think for both sides. 100 kilometer? Let's see what the 100 kilometer is here.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
The last ones I bought were like 200 meter.
Oh. Yeah, okay, all right. They're a little bit more expensive. They're $600, but still, like, I mean, at that price.
So I just checked Fiber Store generic 10 gig LR 1310 10 kilometer. It's $27.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have a dual rate one, which will do 1 gig or 10 gig. Also $27.
Nice.
But they did not report any tri-speed ones. So I don't really have much to compare that to.
Yeah, I didn't realize you could with FS. I guess if it's all the same form factor, somebody could figure it out.
And so it looks like the standard 20 kilometer 1 gigs are $8. So it's like, I had looked at like for our IX, I was like, why don't we just only buy the dual rate ones, 10 gigs? Is it worth $20 to send somebody to swap an SFP? No. So just put in the bigger one, and someone upgrades or you need something different. Like I'm assuming that you could do a shut, change the port speed and then no shut, and it comes back. I'm assuming it's not a physical swap.
Yeah, level
If so,
switch.
if so, then that kind of defeats the purpose of doing it remotely. But
That's
I
why
can
you
still
have smart
remember
hands.
a day. Yeah, for sure. I was gonna say I can still remember a day when like 10 gig interfaces were astronomically expensive, and now we're saying that they're basically disposable at like $25 a piece. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh, how times have changed.
well, I bet that if you were to ask your Cisco rep what they would charge for their 10 gig 10 kilometer, it's probably still $1,400.
Oh yeah, it is. I got a quote from them last year about it was 40 kilometer 10 gig optics, and it was like $1,600 or something like that. I was like,
Oh wow, you're serious? I
Yeah.
thought you were joking.
no, it was like 16 or something. It was like, why is it so expensive? Like, there's half a dozen companies selling these for under $100. I could see Cisco being 3 times as expensive, but 10 times? I guess I just haven't had to swallow the Cisco load yet. So,
Well, I mean, the Fiber Store, all the optics I get off of Fiber Store are coded for Cisco. That's the stuff I use. That way, because I know it works flawlessly in Mikrotik, and if I do want to switch it out for a Cisco switch, like I ended up doing, I use the exact same optics, slam them in, and I'm good to go.
yeah. Yeah, no, I one time I called Fiber Store about getting optics coded for Mikrotik, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's just generic. You can run whatever you want in it. It doesn't care." Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Can I get it coded for Mikrotik? Yeah. Cool. Put the little MK on it. So, but yeah,
That's cool.
we're using them, and we've got their temperature hardened ones, and they're working just fine actually. Been pretty happy with them so far. So
Nice. So let's see. What else do we have on here? Looking at the newsletter, they've got RBGESP surge protector. It looks like just a gigabit Ethernet surge protector. Looks like it's weather rated. What is this? IP67. I mean, it's clean looking little surge protector.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll probably debate whether if I want to use those moving forward. Yeah, it's simple, straightforward. It's it's kind of cheap-feely looking, but as long as it does what it does, who cares?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it looks like a simple solution.
And it's IP67.
People are always debating. People are always debating on which ones are the best, right? So
Yeah, and
you got another one to get in there and try with.
Yeah. Oh, there's the diehards who won't use it because they have their $300 surge protectors on their $50 radio. It's like, okay, have fun. And honestly, for the Ubiquitys, we've used the Ubiquity, the little white surge protector thing on those.
Oh,
for
yeah.
a couple different towers. And it's like, sure, the Rocket Prisms, they're like $200, $250 for one, but I mean, honestly, in this time that I've been working for this company for almost 4 years now, and we've lost one radio, and it probably wasn't to lightning. One rocket. It wasn't to lightning. It was a drop. We were moving it around and slid out of the holder and dropped down. So, 200-foot drop is not something you can really build around. So, I don't blame Ubiquity for that one. So,
Yeah.
But we don't have a lot of lightning and surge issues on our tower sites. Too bad. And we ground the heck out of everything else, and you put surge bars up at the top and at the bottom, and bind all your ground points together. Do everything the Netonics guy says, and then sacrifice a cute rabbit to the lightning gods, and you'll be fine.
Excellent. You heard it here first. Tommy's keen to help you out with that.
Let's see. Was it
Awesome.
Motorola R57 or something? 61?
56.
50. All right. Well, I got close. So that is actually the go-to document for that stuff. Not that I really read it very much. Transition. Come on. Oh my god.
What? What did I miss?
Is anyone here not interested in the knot?
Oh. I mean, I didn't mean to say it like that. It's got potential. I just don't have any immediate use cases for it. But yeah, they talked about, so we had sort of mentioned the Chateau and the knot before, and here they are saying the knot's going to be $100, which I guess for what it's doing, that's actually a pretty fair price.
Mm-hmm.
I think that before when we talked about it, we didn't really know how much it was going to be, and it seems pretty not bad.
Yeah, I mean, the guys who kind of are doing small little bits of IoT stuff seem to really, Colin, I think, was pretty interested in it. The GPIO is actually really interesting to me.
Yeah, they're saying onboard GPIO, but I don't see any orifices on the side of this thing for the cables to come out. Unless, am I missing them? Is it maybe just above the Modbus connector or something?
Maybe it's on the back side of it.
They got antennas on the backside. It'd have to be on one of the corners then. I don't know. I'm looking at a picture. I don't really see. Well, I see what almost maybe looks like vent holes, but maybe you're supposed to run your GPIO out of those little slots.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know, but
DIY, you just drill a hole in the side of it. You're good to go.
wouldn't be the first time I've done it for Mikrotik.
I drilled a hole to put a a safety cable on like 135 radios. I was not happy at the end of that adventure.
Yeah, but I mean, it comes with with Bluetooth and a bunch of other like nifty little. You can hook up to SIM slot, you got a little SIM, and I mean, it's got basically all sorts of connectivity options. So, I mean, if you're wanting to do low cost tracking or just data collection, that's interesting at the very least, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fit any of my form factors.
Yeah, I don't have any immediate uses. I mean, like, well, how would a WISP use this? They could use it. They could use it as a tower site because I guess the GPIO you could probably tie in sensors for like,
Water,
contacts for like, is the door open? Yeah, water sensor.
temperature.
Yeah, for sure, temperature. What else?
If
You could probably monitor voltages on battery banks. Like if you got a battery backup, you could probably
Yeah.
put a little probe on there. I mean, yeah, you could probably have it do a lot of different stuff for you.
Yeah, and depending on the flexibility, and I don't know much about general purpose I/O, but I seem to recall there were guys who built like whole serial console deals. So you could use it as like a console connection if you had some sort of device that you didn't want to put a full, like what is that, open system or something like that has the console that's network connected. Is a really popular, guys. There's a company out there, but if you could just hook this up to your batteries and something else that's a monitoring, like that's actually kind of handy to me. And then it has, you plug this into your router, another port into your switch, your backhaul switch or whatever, and that gives you emergency connectivity to multiple devices really, really easily. And that's super helpful in a lot of different situations for keeping, getting back into your stuff if something throws its guts all over the place.
So I'm looking at all I can think about is slide 9 on this thing. Like this is just as curious to me. Mikrotik joins SDVoE alliance, and it's some kind of video over Ethernet alliance. And I'm wondering why I should care about this. They dedicated a whole page to it, so it must be something important, right?
Yeah. I wonder how much it costs to do that.
Software-defined video over Ethernet.
I know that just from the kind of light brushings I've had with the network to AV industry, at the professional level, not the home level, that like it is so difficult. There are such stringent requirements for the equipment and protocols and HCLs to make this stuff work. And I think a lot of it is because despite being a network-centric product, the network almost seems to be an afterthought. Like they don't hire people that really know what they're doing on the network side. So it's like they find one way it works, and then that's the only way we're going to support. So, so you see people buying this bizarre equipment because they only tested it with a Huawei Model 576 switch, and so that's what you buy. And so that industry does seem ripe for a bit more monetization, a bit more competition, a bit more, okay, you don't have to have this buggy, multicast, complicated process to work. So maybe that's what this alliance is aiming to do is, okay, let's fix this networked AV ecosystem. And Mikrotik's trying to get in on it. Now, I never heard of it before now, so I don't know how big or important it is, but I'm not in that space every day, so that's why I don't know.
Fair enough. So you're saying there's no immediate reason I should really care about this. This is going to be for other people.
Greg, you should always care about it.
For sure. All right, Mikey, you ready for round one of Mike versus ransomware?
Well, I did add a couple things ahead of that as I was
My bad.
going through here. Because that one, these other ones are a bit more defined of a topic.
All right, what do you got?
So something caused me. As we were talking about the 25 gig stuff and the multi-speed SFPs, I was poking around on FiberStore's website, and I saw that they have a 100G-FR. I'm like, I've heard of SR, LR, ER, ZR, never FR. So I looked it up, and that is so like the original 100 gigs were 10 gig wavelengths going between 100 gig modules. Then when 25 gig came out, then it's 4 25 gig wavelengths going between modules. 100 gig FR is a single wavelength 100 gig. So it's a lot less complicated of a receiver and transmitter. Oddly enough, it costs twice as much. So simplification means it's more expensive. No, it's I'm guessing just because it's only it's new. It appears to be like all the Cisco and Juniper stuff was out on it. Was out last year. And so I was inviting feedback from our community if anybody can tell us a bit more about it, because so far it seems like it doesn't have a home. It's only good for 2 kilometers, so it's not really even the other FiberStore 100 gig stuff. I think you can get 10, possibly even 40 kilometers. And so why should I care? I mean, like, I get that it's taking advantage of 400 gig technology, because I guess 400 gig is for 100 gigs, but it's like, why do I care? Like, it costs me twice as much. I still have the same cable going between. Why am I caring?
Wouldn't it be useful in situations where if you were trying to multiplex signals across a single fiber?
Sure. So if they made a WDM version of this where you could choose which channel it was on and you could stuff it into any passive wave platform,
then it'd
great.
be useful.
It'd be useful, and I would buy some. I'd buy some right now. But what's out so far is not. It's just regular. Now I get stepping stones, but it's like,
Right.
At this point, why should I care?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Cisco and Juniper and all of them don't really sell me as to why I should care, other than saying it's just 1/4 of 400 gig. Is that your selling point? Like it's I'm a mini Corvette, I'm a mini Porsche. Like that's why you should buy me. Like,
I mean, I guess if you were wanting to run a 100 gig system across something that was running other signals, and you wanted to have less chance of things interplaying, it could be a benefit to you. But
hopefully we have some people out there that are smarter than we are about these things and can tell us.
Or at least people.
There was just.
What was that? At least people who run 100 gig ports frequently, unlike me and probably a few of us here. I don't know. Actually, Mike, you do that all the time, don't you?
I look at equipment that has them. I actually do have some gear that has 100 gig ports, and hopefully soon we'll be using them. Well, as 100 gig, we're using them as 40 gigs right now, but for a couple things. But so then on to my next little quick thing I come up with is just kind of a PSA. If you are playing with Mikrotik CHRs, make sure that one of the first thing you do, so that you do not forget, is you license that CHR. so that you don't spend a day troubleshooting why your virtualization platforms, you just can't build VMs. Like doing updates is just dreadfully slow. You're only getting a meg and a half on some VMs, but then other ones are fine, and you just can't figure it out. And you spend a whole day, not a whole day, but a few hours during the course of a day, building spreadsheets of iPerf tests. This host to this host, this type of VM, this type of VM. Now go back, VM to VM, container to container, container to VM, VM to container. All these combinations back and forth, and you're like, but wait, these other ones work just fine. I just did a speedtest.net test of 800 megs on this server. So that what? Wait a minute. Yeah. What would limit me to like? So it's not the servers, it's not the switches, it's not the rest of the network. Oh, all the ones that are slower on the new router. I bet it's not licensed. And it wasn't.
That's not the first time that's happened.
Not the first time it's happened
and
to
it won't
me.
be the last, Mikey.
So I figured I'd remind everyone, because it's now happened to me at least twice. And so the cost of, what was it, $95 for the 10 gig license, paled in comparison to the amount of time I spent speed testing between VMs and hosts, trying to figure out why they weren't very fast. Because most of them were fine. Most of them, if it didn't go through the router, they were, rocking at 9.7 gigs or 18 point whatever gigs, or, if it's on the same host, I was getting 25, 26, 27 gigs in between, two VMs on the same host. Yet downloads only worked at 1 meg.
Yeah, I've had somebody who was, they were in Panama, I think, or they're somewhere in South America, and they had a CHR set up over here to proxy web traffic through or something like that. And he was like, man, for whatever reason, I can only get a meg through. I was like, that's curious. Did you license it? Let me go look. Oh yeah, that fixed it. Thanks. I was like, yeah, so it's definitely not uncommon. It happens to the best of us.
I'm glad it's 1 megabit per second. Then it's like such a clear indicator. It's like, oh, you're only getting traffic at around 99 megabits per second. Oh, okay, let's take a look at this. Somewhere you have an Ethernet problem.
It's not always a hard 1 meg. It's a 1 meg ish. Because I was doing downloads at 150, 160 kilobytes per second, so I was like, well, it's not 1 meg, so that can't, it's just moving on. It's, making some change. It's like, somehow are we routing through a data T1 somewhere on the internet still? Like, what's going on here? So, Mikrotik, think of a way to put a warning on, hey, your CHR is not licensed. Make the background of Winbox red. It says, not licensed. Something to remind me that I need to give you money.
Like Proxmox every time you log in or try to do updates?
Yeah. And then I actually intend to buy support for Proxmox because it's so cheap. It's just, I don't have time right now. But I will.
Isn't that why you buy support?
Well, but I haven't had a problem. Like, I don't know that I've ever really had a problem with Proxmox not working.
Oh yeah, no.
So it's like, I don't need to buy support because from an operation, like, it just works. I'd be buying support to cut, some cheap insurance, but then also like, here's some money for this awesome project. I was talking about things that clear and concise and not rambling, and here we are talking about Proxmox. It's not even on my list. Next item: Tor, border, route reflector, etc. So I was already in the middle of rebuilding my routing infrastructure, as I was moving to a new virtualization environment and new switches and everything at this one company. Some other things, which we'll talk about later, have accelerated some of these works. But before it was just kind of slapped it up. Okay, I've got, I want 2 borders because I want, one on each host, so I've got some physical redundancy. Yeah, right now I'm just actually using 1 core. So both of those go back to just 1 core because I never took the time to get a second one networked in, and the existing network kind of sucks for adding a second anyway. And one of the problems I was facing before I've completed my migration was one of my peers on one of the exchanges kept dropping my BGP session. And of course, it took them a long, they won't readily admit that it's a max prefix issue, but clearly the router is sending back a prefix limit reached error. And then a later packet capture shows me sending far more than the 1 prefix I should be sending through my CHR. And there's probably many of you that have experienced where Mikrotik route filters don't exactly do what you want. In this particular case, it was a route filter that was already built and completely functional on 15 or 20 other BGP sessions. Because, I just use the same route filter for every peer that's on the same exchange. Yet I added 1 more peer, and that particular peer just was more or less, I guess, getting full tables. So the way to fixing that I could see other than getting rid of Mikrotik as a whole was to adopt a route reflector. I haven't implemented it yet because other problems came up, but I kind of saw that as I can kill multiple birds with 1 stone. Route reflectors are more scalable. I was thinking that, once you're virtualizing your routers, why not just make a separate VM per connection? I can't say per peer because on an exchange I can only have 1 router for 1 IP address, but I'll have many peers. But a separate VM for every upstream that I have, and then 2 of them, so I have redundancy and so on. Because it doesn't cost me any more other than a software license of $100. It doesn't cost me any more compute, really. It's still routing them all through in software anyway. So why not make a bunch of them, other than the complexity of networking them all together? Well, in comes the route reflector to kind of work on that. And then I thought, well, the route reflector, I can have a non-Mikrotik route reflector, free range routing, something like that. And then I could do all of my route filtering there. So other than a Mikrotik sending back out the same routes that it's received in from a peer, it wouldn't ever get the other routes it shouldn't have, because the route reflector would only ever send it the routes that it should have. So to my IX peer, my route reflector would have only ever sent it my prefixes I intend to go to the exchange. I still have the route filters on the Mikrotik, but figured there'd be kind of a way to kind of put some of that Mikrotik route reflector Mikrotik route filter problems in check, because another device is the device doing the filtering.
And you get kind of built-in suspenders. If free range router ever decides that it wants to do something weird and send something probably inane or not useful, like the 8 dot range, you could Mikrotik might catch that and filter it out as well. So, you know, having lots and lots of different ways to block things from going out is probably not an imprudent thing. I know my route filters on my routers are probably insane just because they have multiple statements doing the same thing. And I doubt that they actually, the later ones probably just, they're completely redundant, pretty much. But I was terrified of being that guy, even though I'm pretty certain all of my upstreams are pretty good about filtering what I send to them. But yeah, it makes sense to have multiple different systems to make certain that everything's plays right. And especially going into an IX, you kind of want to be a good internet citizen. So.
Sure. Yeah. And then, you know, having that route reflector there, like I'm still kind of torn. So I got some advice to do my core in a layer 3 switch, not as another CHR. Problem is that, you know, at a layer 3 switch that does full routes, why do I even have the Mikrotiks at that point? We'll just do it all right there. So it's going to have a limited set of routes. So then what do I send there? How do I send it there? Well, you know, I could shape that with the route reflector. You know, I could use that to limit what actually then goes into the core. You know, how I work out the rest of the stuff in terms of, you know, which is actually the best path out. You know, maybe people don't care at that point. You know, obviously things that go to the IX have to go to the IX, and IX routes would fit inside a layer, you know, a small layer 3 switch. And then after that, maybe people don't care which transit port they use. It just goes out one of them. They don't care. I guess to be fair, as an eyeball, you're not worrying about port capacity. So yeah, you just throw your outbound out whatever port it wants to go out, I suppose. But that's a pill that's a bit, you know, it's a bit too much different from what I've been used to. So I'm kind of going, you know, one step at a time without changing everything that I do at once.
For those
then I don't know what's broken.
Yeah, for those of us who aren't very familiar with IBGP and route reflectors, how does the route reflector filter down what you can get? I guess I'm maybe missing something there.
Meaning, well, so different platforms may have their own unique ways of doing things, but a widely supported way should be working with communities. So I would tag every route I learned via Transit 1, Transit 2.
Okay.
Well, I guess Transit 1A, Transit 1B, Transit 2A, Transit 2B, and
Okay.
exchange with different communities. And then the reflector then says, you know, I allow or disallow different communities. So it could say, you know, I know the best way to the world, and I'll tell my borders the best way to the world, but I'll only give the core the routes that have the community that indicate they were learned from the IX, because those are the ones that matter the most, and so it would just then only send those.
Okay.
There are different vendors have different ways of doing route compression and various other tricks to limit the size of the table by taking out things that don't really matter. Or if there's like, I think Arista is good at this for some of their smaller route capacity devices. And from what I understand, you know, I'm sure someone there will correct me if I'm wrong. If they see, you know, 4/24s with the same next hop, then they'll just insert a /22 of that next hop. It doesn't change how any bits would ever flow. but it takes 3 routes out of the table. So they just wash, rinse, repeat. If there's, drop the things that are obviously not gonna, doesn't matter one way or the other, and then go from there. I don't know if any of these other platforms support anything like that. I just know that, some of the layer 3 switch guys employ things like that.
That's a lot of memory if you're trying to do that all in like an ASIC. So yeah, it makes sense. Or smaller processor with small bits of memory. So yeah, it makes sense. Okay, all right. I guess I must have been a little bit confused about what you were talking about, and so that makes sense. Yeah, it sounds like a good plan and makes things pretty simple.
Yeah, and then on my border core route reflector thing, you have a couple route reflectors at different places, and then they just keep throwing on cores and borders as needed, and everybody works with a much simpler BGP configuration set aside from the initial complexity. It's just a couple of peerings, and then away you go. But I guess as I said earlier, it might not solve everything, because if my Mikrotik router is letting everything through, then it would probably let through anything I learned on the exchange back out to the exchange. So I may still have the same problem. It may just be less.
Yeah.
Which actually, it may then be worse, because then somebody's going to trip on a full table coming through and shut me down. Finally send a, I think this other peer had a 3,000 limit, or a prefix limit. If I had sent 2,000, they would let me through, and at which point then I'm...
Yeah, then there's some real problems.
I'm actively leaking routes, and now I am in problems. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Fail fast and fail hard. Take the Elon Musk route.
Fail epically, at least. Speaking of failure, there was some you had some fun runs with ransomware and wiping everything up. You were alluding to
it had and having and will have all tenses of the verb apply. So it is unsure as to how it got in. There are a couple theories out there floated by not just myself, but people smarter than I. I have spoken with the FBI about this particular issue, and it's a variant that they're not really familiar with. They didn't say they didn't. It's just not one that they recognized and had an easy way out of. And if you Google for it, you pretty much only find one thread on BB Computer. So it's kind of unique. But somehow a non-internet connected Windows server. Oh, caveat, I did not build this environment. I was just tasked with maintaining it, and as I mentioned earlier, brought my Proxmox stuff, and I was already in the process of moving away from it. But they got to a non-internet connected Windows server that was serving up iSCSI LUNs to VMware hosts, and ransomwared it.
Oof.
They also got a couple other things, but they're still working. So they got a domain controller, but Active Directory still works. DNS is still serving. I can't manage it, but it's still serving. DHCP still works. All right, so I can migrate off of it, but it's not really affecting operations at the moment, so I don't care.
Yeah.
And there may be some other devices, but yeah, so it's been it's been interesting because it's like, well, if they got to a non-internet connected server, something else is compromised. So it's pretty much a. Thankfully, I already started, as I mentioned, stand up entirely new everything. If I have data, I can migrate that data, then set everything on fire. Because once they're in like that, it's like, how much time are you going to spend trying to figure out all the stuff? Like, I was already rebuilding it, so.
From stuff that just been sitting around for months.
Yeah. yeah. It, actually, this was somebody else's project, and then we had the servers for a few months, and then my goal was, I'll go in and I'll build the first set of Proxmox configs so that the guys see what it's supposed to look like, and then I'll let them do the rest. Well, I walked in one day, and I'm working through all of it after it took them way too long to upgrade firmware and things. And I'm looking at the servers, and I'm like, there's a label on the front over like a drive bay slot that's like, it's not really a drive bay, it's just like a blank in the chassis, and I'm like, how many drives do I want? This is an 8-bay chassis. I wanted 10-bay chassis. Check the order. Sure enough, we ordered 10-bay chassis. So then all the work that had been done on those servers to that point, pretty much thrown away because we got to get new ones. And, they were kind enough to send us replacements. We had to swap like RAM and CPUs over. But then you got to start all over. Upgrading all the firmware and everything all over again. Setting it all up. And then by the time all that had happened, we had gotten to the point where the guy whose project it was, he was let go. So then it's back to my project again. So and I don't have enough projects, so it kind of got slow.
I hear you, bro.
But I intend on a future episode to have a bit more in-depth security conversations with smarter people. But I guess kind of some highlights. Do not use Windows Server as an iSCSI file store. There's no reason. Or NFS. Anything else that you could use, Linux, BSD, Solaris.
SolarWinds.
Use any of those things. Probably don't use that. But if you could use anything other than Windows to be a file server, whether it's individual files or, iSCSI or whatever, do that. Because the ransomware people said that, you have 4 to 5 computers. No, I have way more than that. There's like 40 VMs. It's just that most of them are Linux. So they were just completely blind to that. They didn't even know anything about any of the VMware boxes. Right? It's just, or any of the VMs that are sitting directly on local storage. None of that was affected. It was just, well, I mean, there was a couple of the Windows boxes because they were connected, but so use Linux as your storage when you can. It's just more secure. But as I rebuild things, one of my problems is, okay, since I'm building this from scratch, now it's already partially my fault because I was the one running the network, but this will be totally my fault because I will have built it and ran it. Security, firewalls, access to things. It's like, okay, well, things perhaps were a little bit more loose than they should be in the old environment. But how far can you really go? One of our applications, it runs a full client on the workstation and talks MS SQL back to the server. So you have to leave MS SQL open. That's probably not a good idea. So you limit it to just the PC, just the IPs that you need to access it. Except those are the employees who are the workstations who are going to cause something to come in the first place. It's not my computer. My computer is not the one that's, getting Trojans loaded up and firing things into the network. It would be a CSR or a finance person or a graphics designer or, somebody who's not IT centric. So what good? I mean, it's better than a stick in the eye. I get it, but how far can you really go in firewalling the threats? I mean, you can firewall off the public internet, but you can't firewall off your employees from the servers that they have to use. So what do you do? I mean, Mikrotik firewalling, firewall 1.0, just a simple ACL, be it on Cisco or Mikrotik or Viata or whatever. It's just source, destination, IP, and port. And, TCP, UDP, other things like that. But that's all you can do. And it's surely, if you have to allow an activity for a good use, the activity will also be allowed for a bad use. So what do you do?
Well, there's plenty of people out there, I'm certain, who have their answers or would be more than happy to sell you a solution there, Mike.
Yes. And I'm sure we'll get some comments on this, but and I suppose the solution is that you'd have to get some sort of, I'm just going to throw out a bunch of vendors. I'm not necessarily endorsing any of them. FortiGate, Palo Alto, WatchGuard. There's others I can't think of right now. Mostly because I'm not in that space. Because usually because ISPs aren't supposed to be going with fancy firewalls. But when it's their own servers, I guess you have to. So I'd imagine something in that space would be appropriate.
Or you just dump the need for the whole server. Come on, Mike. There's more than one solution to this problem.
And so some people are going to say, that's why you move everything to the cloud. But then then you're just paying somebody else to have that knowledge. I mean, that may or not be important to you, but the problem still has to be solved. You're just not paying somebody else to solve it for you.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier to find somebody like that, though, to pay than to hire somebody in your area.
Cloud is maybe not as secure or as resilient as we all think. One of the ransomware kind of expert guys I was talking to this past week had said that even though we're not running local exchange, that there could still be some kind of connection to the problems that Microsoft is having. On some of the calls, he didn't cite who said it, but he said on some of the CISA calls, and CISA, for those that don't know, is the arm of the Department of Homeland Security here in the United States that focuses on cyber security, cyber warfare type stuff. Had said that someone on that call was mentioning that that the problems that Microsoft is experiencing with Exchange right now is actually much more pervasive than is currently being let on, mostly due to a lack of knowledge. Not so much ill intent, but that there was little surprise to be had if if 365 was compromised, if Azure AD was compromised. We're connected into Azure AD to our local. That could be how it came in.
Yeah.
Especially with how rare my kind is. There's no end to what all is going on. I think they said that there's estimated that there's 10 different organizations that have their hooks into Microsoft at the moment.
Yeah. Or
no, I can't back any of that up. It's just some guy told me it, but where he said he got it from sounds like people that know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Or the cloud could escape the cloud. As we saw in Strasbourg this last week as well. But the cloud could be on fire. Yeah.
Let's do the closeout, Mikey. If folks want to get a hold of you out on the internet, how do we do that?
Apparently, what seems to be effective is putting ransomware on my servers.
But
I don't recommend it.
Fast, huh?
I don't recommend it though.
All right. I'll just leave that hanging out there. Tommy, if folks want to get a hold of you out on the internet, how would you have them do that?
I got a website that I just had to renew the domain for, lostcreek.tech. You can email me at tommy@lostcreek.tech, or you can join up you can give the Brothers WISP a couple bones and get on there, and then it will be a race to see who can answer your question that I am starting to lose. Dagnabbit, I cannot keep up with some of the people here and all the very smart people. So don't hire a consultant.
I've been watching. You've been doing a great job. And Tommy also does a little bit of consulting here and there. Are you still?
Yeah, I do a little bit. My bank decided to close down, and apparently it's a little bit hard for a new business to get a bank account, or at least I've been having some difficulty with it. Maybe it's my partner. I don't know what the problem is, and I don't know why it's been such a pain in the neck. But I'm going this Saturday. I'm going on Monday down to a credit union to get an account set up. So there's a lot of people who, if you can get work from me, and I will just not charge you for it because it's too much of a pain. So.
Well, I know a guy that has some ransomware problems. There you go. He could probably use some help.
Really? I wish I knew anything about system admin. I spent all of Saturday last week screaming at a server. So, yeah. No, that's about the best way to get a hold of me, Brothers WISP, or shoot me an email.
Very cool. You can find me at gregsoul.com. I still blog occasionally there. And patreon.com/brotherswisp. You find me in the Patreon-only Slack, especially if you DM me. That's a really good way to get a hold of me. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tommy. And I guess we'll see you guys next time.
Take care. Feel better, guys.
What you are missing. Ideas and some good comedy given. If you missed the show already, don't worry, you're forgiven.